Well, good morning, everyone. It's Angela Allen. Welcome back to the Handmade Homestead and Garden. Well, today I want to tell you why fall is the perfect time to talk about growing peppers. Let's go. It's early morning here on the east coast of Rhode Island, zone 7A, and we are out in my garden. It is 2 days before the first day of fall. Every year, people successfully grow 2-3 foot pepper plants and have pretty good fruit production on those, and they feel successful at the end of the year, and that is successful for a lot of people. And success is measured by different things, by different people. I myself, I am looking for the most productive, the most robust plants that I can produce. So I am 5 foot 2 inches tall, and these are my pepper plants. I don't know if you can see these, but some of these are over 5 feet tall. Now they're laden down by the fruit on them, which is making them look a little bit shorter. The fencing behind me is all 4 feet, and most of these plants, especially those back there, you can really see are definitely a foot above that. Now, how do I grow them so big? It's actually really easy. So I'm going to show you how, and we're going to talk about getting the most produce off your pepper plants. You ready? Let's go. Well, these are my pepper plants. Now, I plant a lot of peppers, probably about 100 or so. I like them, I freeze them, I can them. We get a lot of use out of them. And I want to show you that these aren't just tall green plants. These are plants that are full of fruit. I don't normally save my pepper seeds because pepper packets aren't expensive. They come with a lot of seeds, and you really just need a few plants to get really great results. So, how am I doing this? It's simple. It's just compost and a jadam tank. So why talk about pepper plants, sun-loving, heat-loving pepper plants 2 days before the first day of fall? So peppers are heavy, heavy feeders. Now, those of you who follow me know that I don't use a lot of fertilizer in my garden. In fact, I use compost that we make here, and I use a jadam tank or a jadam tank to add probiotics to make the things, the inorganic matters, the salts, the minerals, everything available in the soil to the plants more readily. I use probiotics. The probiotics generated, the microbes generated from using a jadam tank, and I'll show you that in just a minute. I have talked about it in other videos, so you can look it up there too, but I will talk about it here as well, just for the new people so that you can see what I'm talking about. If you don't produce a lot of fertilizer in the form of compost for your own garden, or purchase compost for your garden, which I don't like to do because oftentimes that's sterilized, and I don't want it sterilized. I want those microbes. So I make our compost. But if you're purchasing it, or you're a small urban gardener and you're just looking for something for a few small beds, certainly you can use organic or inorganic fertilizer, if you're comfortable with that, to fertilize your plants. I don't know if you can see these well enough in the camera, but these are peppers called pippin. You can see that they're black. They start out green. They turn a really deep purple going into black when they're ripe, and the plants are no disappointment. They're not big peppers. They're about the size of a shishito, but they are not a disappointment. They're really prolific, and I don't know if you can see the really beautiful little purple flowers. Those are quite pretty too. So when pepper plants are young and you first put the seedlings in the early summertime, they require a lot of feeding. What you need to add is just a very balanced, like 10-10-10 or 5-5-5 fertilizer. So across the board, they have all of the nitrogen, all of the potassium, and all of the phosphorus that they need to grow healthy plants. You want the plants to grow well. But when it gets to be a little bit closer to midsummer and they first start showing all of these little blossoms, you want to switch over and make sure that they're getting a lot more potassium and a lot more phosphorus and a lot less nitrogen. At that point, you don't want to grow huge healthy leaves. You do want to grow fruit and blossoms that set fruit. So you're going to double, maybe even triple the potassium and the phosphorus. So the last two numbers. So you'd want something more like 10-30-20 or 10-30-30 or something similar to that. Those big numbers when it comes to fertilizer, 10-10-10 as opposed to 1-1-1, has to do with the dilution of the amount of that in the product. So 10-10-10 is very much a stronger version, 10 times stronger version than something that says 1-1-1. So balanced fertilizer just means those numbers are all the same and you're just going to use a little less. So when you fertilize, if you're using regular fertilizer, when you fertilize your plants, especially your peppers, it's a good idea to fertilize every 2 weeks and just to do a little bit of a weaker strength fertilizer and fertilize the ground, not the plant itself. Unless you're doing foliar feeding, you want to put that fertilizer where the roots are and water it in. Don't just spread it on there and leave it. If you put even liquid fertilizer down, you want to water after and get that fertilizer mixed into the soil and down to where the roots can use it. Now do some reading about fertilizer yourself too, because I am no expert on fertilizers. I don't use much fertilizer, if any at all, in my growing practice. I am an organic gardener, so everything that I use, everything that comes within this fence line here surrounding my garden is absolutely organic, and the same thing with the fence line going around the outside of my backyard where I have things growing. I'm very strictly organic. We do have dogs that use the grassed in part of our yard, and we eat what comes out of this vegetable garden, so I'm careful about that. Does that mean I think everybody has to be organic? It does not. You do what you are comfortable with for your family. I have no judgment about that. And in keeping with organic practices here, we make all of our own compost, and we make a lot of it. I have 3 4x4x4 foot bins that we use to make compost. We always have 3 piles going. One we are currently filling with garden waste and kitchen scraps that don't go to chickens. One bin that's a working bin that's full to the top and waiting to be used next year. Probably was filled from the fall garden the year before. And then we have one bin that's compost that's finished and ready to use in the garden. So we do make quite a bit a year. And because of that, I am really a compost only fertilizer person, if you will. We use compost, and we use a lot in this garden. So I don't buy commercial fertilizer other than liquid fish emulsion, which I do use on my indoor plants in the house. I do buy organic for that too. I don't know that it matters. We're certainly not eating the house plants. So, but the other thing that I use, which is just a given in this garden, is I use a JADAM tank or a JDAM tank. It's actually an acronym, JADAM. You can look that up online. The wonderful gardener Hugh Richards has some good videos on using a JADAM tank, and I think that's probably where I first heard about it from. But I've been using one for a couple of years. I love the tank. Other than compost, that is what I use on my plants, and I noticed a huge uptick in the size and productivity of my garden plants once I started using a JDAM tank. And we can go over there and have a look at that It's not all that pretty, but it's worth knowing about, and it's easy to make your own, so let's go over there. Back here next to my compost pile, I just have a little makeshift gardening table. I couldn't do without having one of those, I can tell you that. And I do keep a Jadam tank right over here, the blue tank you see at the left. I keep it over here because it keeps it out of the wind, but I do keep it out year round, and I don't empty it at the end of the season. It just goes all the time. Will it freeze in the winter? Yes, it will. Will that slow down or kill some of the organisms in it? Yes, it will. And is that okay with me? Absolutely, because I do feed it regularly and add more water regularly. So let's get a closer look at it. Be glad you're not here, because Jadam tanks, they're stinky. So Jadam tanks are basically a tank of water that has vegetation in it, native to your area. I keep mine closed because I don't want mosquitoes in it, and because it is a stinky process. So when you first start out, excuse me for leaning, a Jadam tank, you just put a little bit of grass clippings, other vegetation, and you stir that in with, just fill it full of water, as clean a water as you can get. Rainwater is probably better than chlorinated water, but whatever you've got works. And it smells kind of like grass when you've let it ferment too long in the sun. So you start a Jadam tank out with just some grass, a handful of really good active compost, and a whole bunch of water. And then you add to it just additional grass, leaves, plant clippings. I throw the occasional banana peel in there. I also, because we're coastal, will throw a little bit of seaweed in there occasionally too. Not too much. I don't want the salt to damage the organisms, but I want that tank fermenting. And to use it, you literally dip out a tiny bit of the liquid, strain it out. This is just a strainer. It has its own strainer. And dilute it a lot. And I mean a lot. You only need an ounce or so in a gallon of water. And then I water my plants with it. And what it provides is a lot of microbes. And those microbes, when they are fed into the soil, populate the soil. They break down the nutrients in the soil into micronutrients that your plants can uptake through their roots to explode their growth, their fruit, their vegetable production. It's really surprising. Now, it is a little bit stinky, the water. And when I fertilize with Jadam in my garden, you can smell it in the garden for maybe a half hour, 20 minutes. But I can tell you that my closest neighbor on that side of my garden has never complained. So it goes away quickly, and it's not offensive at all, really. Even when you first put it in there, it's not offensive, but it does leave a little bit of a smell for 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. If you water it in, though, that's not going to be a problem either. And you should water it in. Once you put Jadam liquid down through a sprinkler or however you choose to apply it, you should definitely water it in. You can use it for foliar feeding. It doesn't have to be just for watering. But I'm telling you, plants just explode in growth and fruit production. They really do. You can see my compost bins behind me, but I'm gonna turn this camera around so you can see my tomato plants and just see just how tall they are. It's pretty amazing. So it is a Saturday morning here, and my neighbors are starting to wake up. So if you hear some cars or some car doors or that kind of thing, I'm urban, and I have great neighbors. I have the best neighbors all around us. We couldn't be happier with them. So, all right. So I've turned around, and one of the reasons I avoided being this way is because the sun is right there, and it is, you can see, a little bit blinding. So, all right, I've turned the camera around. The garden is behind me, and I want you to see just how big my tomato plants are. Now, those are tomato plants that you see right there behind me. These are fruit trees, and you can see the tomatoes are, well, they're at least 8 feet tall, I would say. Some of them maybe even 9. Those cattle panels are 4-foot tall cattle panels. They're about 18 inches, so 1.5 feet off the ground. So the top of those cattle panels are almost at 5.5 feet. I don't think they're 6 feet, but they're probably close. And you can see how tall the tomatoes are going up. And if you think that's all foliage, you'd be wrong. Let's go closer. All right, so why are we talking about tomatoes when this is a video about peppers? Well, because what goes for peppers goes for tomatoes too. They grow the same, they have the same requirements and the same fruiting, and it's a lot easier to see those tomatoes over here than in the jungle of peppers that I showed you at the beginning of the video. But as you can see, these are super productive too. It's the jadam. I use great compost. I do water, but not a ton. And it's the jadam tank, people. That's what it is. Make a jadam tank. They're super easy. And let it ferment. And as you use the jadam tank, you're going to just replace the water and occasionally throw in another handful of grass or something to keep the probiotics or the bacteria in it growing. All right, well, once again, if you found this information helpful, please like and subscribe and comment. It helps so much with the algorithm, and we are doing our best to grow. I'll see you next time. Take care.